dia, Portugal!
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, you Gumpers.
Hola, bom dia, Carl Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show live stream and podcast. That was your global history of chips, which is pretty good. Prescient, is that the right word? It's appropriate. Chips in every language and culture there, and the real struggle of one of our community as he tries to order chips here in Portugal. You just see the slug peeping up from the banner, which tells us this morning that we have a packed show. We really do. I'm not sure where to begin, but you've got to begin somewhere. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? A very good place to begin. We'll be having Jackie join us, Jackie A from Expats Portugal, joining us at around 1:45, where I must remember as well to send the link for the show to Mr. Jeremy Black, who'll be joining us around 9, when Heather will be joining us too from Boots on the Ground Portugal. Jeremy, an absolutely prolific historic writer. I was having a look at his. There are too many books on there to count. If you read out his list of books mainly on history, you actually become part of history. There are so many there. An incredible, prolific writer, and he's written among those books. I'm hoping he can remember what he's said and written about Portugal, because he's written so many books. History of this, that, and the other. He's the author, of course, of A Brief History of Portugal. And this was a book that came to the attention of Michael Heron, who was meant to join us today, but for reasons that are beyond his control, cannot join us after all. So Heather and I will have a brief chat with Jeremy Black. Do commend the book to you if you're looking for a bit of a primer on Portugal. Definitely recommend The Brief History of Portugal by Jeremy Black, who'll be talking to at around 9 o'clock this morning. I'll put the link for that into the chat right now. Let me just copy it for you. Copy link address. Come on, I don't want to save it. I just want to copy it and pop that into the chat. Let's see who's here in just a moment as well. And last but not least, certainly, we've got Bobby O'Reilly joining us at around 9:30 in about an hour's time too. We haven't spoken to Bobby since the scrapping of the NHR was announced last week. There's a special webinar about that tomorrow that Jackie from Expats Portugal will be telling us about. Some of you, of course, will know Daniel Reis and Gilda Pereira from EI, who will be talking on the subject tomorrow evening at 7:30. Busy times. And at Tamar this weekend, more and more people telling me they're joining us in Tamar. It's still not too late to join us there this weekend. We'll be arriving on Friday and staying for a couple of days, enjoying Tamar and doing a bit of filming The Englishman, The Irishman, and Two Brummies on Saturday afternoon. Looking forward to having a great time in Tamar this weekend, where we first arrived. Me and Mrs. Emma and the kids arrived in Tamar in 2017, around this time of year. Very special place, fond memories for us, and it'll be a delight to be back there. Bobby was at the airport last night, ahead of his arrival on the show this morning. Can you decode as to why this was going on at the airport when he was here? When he was there, not here, he'll be here at 9:30. He was at the airport last night, and this was going on. What's going on at the airport at Lisbon Airport? A Hare Krishna fest. It did sound a bit like Hare Rama Hare there, didn't it? A bit more. I've never had a welcome like that at Lisbon Airport. I've had some nice welcomes there, but not one as noisy as that. The massed voices of men have been terrifying if you didn't know what was going on there. What was happening at the airport? Colin will... not Colin. Colin is our rugby correspondent. Bobby is our rugby fan, of course. From your home and Head de Mayo and Dynasty Homes. He'll be here to talk about many things. Looking forward to the weekend, filming with Bobby again. The scrapping of the NHL, I'm sure he'll have something to say about that. And of course, revealing the mystery as to why all those fellows were there at the airport, singing as they were yesterday evening. Francis, have you sent me... oh, I see. Yes, okay, here's another clue. Thank you very much, Francis, for that. That's very beautiful. Oh, that's very moving, isn't it, seeing that? So that's another visual clue as to why that was going on at the airport last night from Francis. Let me just bring this onto the screen so you can see this. This is the an aeroplane, not any old aeroplane. You can see the TAP insignia there, can't you? From Toulouse. There's another clue. From Toulouse to Lisbon yesterday evening. It was delayed, as most planes seem to be these days. TAP Express. Scheduled departure was 1845. Actual departure was 2026. And people were getting pretty excited. Oh, did it arrive? Oh, yes, it arrived before it left in terms of time zone. And the call sign was Lobos. There's another clue for you. How about that? Superb. Bobby will reveal that mystery if somebody else doesn't in the chat. Nice one, Francis. Thank you very much for that. Very, very quick there on the mark, off the mark. Not on the mark. Well, probably on the mark and off the mark. Coach Turner, talk about people being quick off the mark, quick off the blocks. It's our sprinter and a trainer in residence. Coach Turner. Bon dia Gumpers, he says, off to a school grandparents' lunch today. School grandparents. Is that a new thing? I never had that in my day. But then again, my grandparents lived in Malaysia, so it would have made it quite inconvenient to attend that. Would have been nice to go to Malaysia for a school grandparents' lunch. Great food over there. So after that dinner later with the rest of the family, while the school food may not be up to much, it's a privilege to be included. A school dinner. Okay, so the school are inviting the grandpeas in, are they? That's a nice idea, isn't it? Very nice. A sense of community. God squad tip of the day. Mrs. T seems to have lost her exercise mojo recently, and it's frustrating her. We all go through phases in our lives for all sorts of reasons. Try not to beat yourself up about it. Yeah. It's that biting point again, isn't it? Enough. What would you call it? Discipline, insight, reality, honesty with oneself to get the results you want, but not to beat yourself up, not to go too far and give yourself a counterproductive hard time. No point in doing that, is there? It's getting the balance. It's all about balance and measure. Measure. There's a word you don't hear very often, not used in the context I've just used anyway. To everything there is measure, is there not? I think so. Set yourself little targets, maybe with a treat at the end. Mine this morning will be a coffee. See, these are the games we play with ourselves, aren't they? And possibly each other as well. Thank you, Coach Turner, for that. Be kind to yourselves. Reward yourself after you've achieved your targets. Maybe make little targets, a series of little targets, rather than something too big and unattainable for which you can beat yourself up about. I'm getting so much of that sort of insight listening to the Diarrhea of a CEO podcast. Anyone else listen to Stephen? He has some amazing guests. I was a bit, I was honestly put off by the first few I listened to. I don't like those podcasts where if we could just take a minute to stop the podcast and not talk to you about what you've come here to talk about. And I know it's a fine one. I'm a fine one to say this because I do distract and deviate, but I tend to keep on topic and don't talk too much about the podcast itself. Try and keep it on track about all things to do with Portugal. But there's these games I think podcasters play to boost their numbers and to get your attention. Wasn't too keen on that at first, but his guests are so compelling and interesting. Not the big names necessarily, but the big thinkers on the little subjects in life that are so crucially important, the sort of thing that Coach Turner often talks about, in fact, here with us on Good Morning Portugal. So, yeah, Diary of a CEO, recommend that. Bon dia a todos. Oh, and talking of podcasts, I'm in communication with a gentleman who started a podcasting studio in Lisbon. So if you want to get started recording your own podcast, you can do that. In Lisbon now, and I'll be talking to the owner of that podcasting studio in Lisbon on Friday morning. Before we talk to Philomena, we'll be talking to this gentleman who's opened a podcasting studio. I found out about that through the Expat Dads group which is mainly focused around Lisbon, as to be said. And that's why I think we're talking to him and about his new podcasting studio there in the capital. Looking forward to that. That'll be Friday. Before then, of course, we have Katia Lima joining us tomorrow with a guide to Portuguese cafes, not coffees, but cafes. The cafes themselves, the establishments, and that very, very naughty Portuguese will be joining us tomorrow as well, before Philomena on Friday. Jackie will be with us in just a moment with a sound, vision, and a cup of coffee. She looks so relaxed and has breezed in here without a hitch. Well, we'll see about that in just a moment when we chat with her. Bom dia todos from James. Feliz carta. Como va todos? Oh, here we go. I've got to make sure I put his visual dad joke up. I went to the paint store to get thinner. It didn't work. You see, that doesn't work in UK because we call them thinners over there, or something completely different. But I like that. I went to the paint store to get thinner. It didn't work. Something to think about, says James, standing in for T-Duck with the big ideas, the big thoughts, and the quesadillas, etc., and the dad jokes. Everybody wants to change the world. But hey, hold on a minute. We did this 2 days ago, but okay, it's worth repeating. It's a good one. Something to think about. Everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change the toilet paper. Be the change. Jackie nodding to that. Maybe it's a thing in her household. It's always me that has to do this. And is it a quiff or mullet in terms of folding the first sheet on the TP, as some people politely refer to it? And also, while we're here, I've got to put this visual dad joke on the screen. What makes you think I've got a back problem? Oh, just a hunch. It says here. Now, if this is a problem for you, we can announce, we're proud to announce that our friend Matty has now embedded himself in Pombal with his clinic. And I had a visual for it yesterday, which seems to have disappeared now. So instead of that, I might just have to show you the picture of the DeLorean again, or me and my dog. So Matty would approve of that. There's me and Jimmy Choo. And don't forget that Matty has opened a clinic in Pombal. Oh, and here's while we're there, here's Yilda with some donuts. Okay, pretty random, but I can't find Matty's picture of him in his whites getting ready to help people with their pain management in Pombal. We will come back to that because we'll be talking about Matty and pain management in Pombal in due course, and probably talk to him actually when he gets there and opens that up. Must remember, is someone reminding me to send Jeremy the link? Please send link. All right, Jeremy, he's all over it. I'm doing it now. And he'll be joining us soon, but not until we've had a chat with Jackie, who I think we can bring onto the screen now a minute early. That's unlike us, but let's strike while the iron's hot. Well, we've definitely got her with visuals and sound. Let's bring her onto the screen. Jackie Acevedo, how are you this morning, Jackie?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you for asking.
You are very, very, very good. We can see you. You got the backdrop. I like your kitchen.
I got it together.
I like your kitchen, but you prefer the corporate backdrop, which is very fitting. And tomorrow evening, it's a really special webinar, isn't it? Because of the furore about the scrapping of the NHR tax regime.
Mm-hmm.
Well done, Expats Portugal, for putting this together. Can you tell us a bit more?
You know, I think the NHR, it's getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
It's getting a lot of attention. For instance, when we came here 4 years ago, we got in under the wire, which meant, and this is very complicated, the NHR, I'm reading as much as I can and I still don't get it. But how I understand it.
Right. Yes.
And that's why we're having the webinar tomorrow evening. But one of the things that we understand is that for the first year, I believe, if I work in Portugal, I only pay 20% tax. That's my understanding. I have 0% tax for the monies that I'm bringing in from the US. I'm paying taxes on those monies. But if I'm in a 30% tax bracket in the US and I'm a 48% in Portugal, I would normally have to pay that 18% tax. And I think that's scaring a lot of people. And I don't think they're wrong. I think, that, let's say, I'm just using a round number, 100,000. Well, if you're paying 30%, now you're paying 48%. That's,
Big
another
deal.
$18,000. That's a lot of
Absolutely.
money.
It's a big deal, especially if you premised your plans on the former scenario and you discover that soon you'll be paying in the latter scenario. But you're right, it is very complicated, isn't it?
It is complicated, but it's one of those things. Last Thursday, I believe his name was Slug. He went by Slug.
Yeah.
And he said something that I want to expand a little bit on. He said, if you're moving to Portugal just to save money, that's not a good reason.
Yeah.
There are more reasons to move here. And I think you have to be philosophical. So if I end up paying an $18,000 for an extra $18,000, I'm also paying roughly $18,000 less on my medical, as opposed to if I had lived in the US and I wasn't on Medicaid.
Yes.
So it always ends up being some sort of a wash. And I still think if you think about the reasons you're moving here, and if safety is something that's important to you, and quality of life and the quality of your food, and there are other issues, ultimately the money situation is going to be a wash. You may not come out ahead, but you're not going to lose. And I think that's the way to kind of think about it in a more philosophical way, because if you're coming here to get ahead in terms monetarily, that may not happen.
Yeah.
But in every other way, you will come out ahead.
I think you're right. I think you're likely, Portugal is likely to become less advantageous. We can say that as a generality, can't we, about the scrapping of the NHR? How that will affect people specifically and individually is a matter for professional advice. And that, again, is not a clear and complete area. You'll be needing a CPA on both sides of the water, and it becomes very murky in this country. You'll talk to 3 different accountants here and tax advisors, and you might not get the 3 same answers. That's something you have to get used to in this country. And we've told you, we've said that now. It's a message that it will be reiterated, I'm sure, and it's something that people really need to know about. It's different. You can't expect the same cultural sort of positioning on money, taxation, and accountancy. That might be a shock to some people, but you need to bear that in mind. And I think your point is brilliant, Jackie. That you're sharing from James. If money is the only reason you're choosing Portugal, that's probably not a great strategy.
It isn't a great strategy, and there's so much more the country has to offer.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I also think if you're going to be an immigrant, there's a certain degree of risk. And you have to be comfortable with risk, because that's the nature of doing this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want to mitigate their risk. And I think that's okay to a point. But I always think it's almost like having a baby. I mean, you're just throwing caution to the wind at that point. You don't know what the future is going to hold.
Yes.
And that's how I kind of think, you have to be willing to say, look, I believe that I'm going to have a better life, and I'll take the risk.
Yeah, well said. Well said. For the risk averse, it's got worse, hasn't it? Let's face it. That's another variable that you might not want to entertain right now. Things are changing, and that's inevitable, isn't it? Things will change for people moving to Portugal, anywhere in the world. These things are constantly changing. But I like that analogy. The birthing of a new life in a new country will bring with it pain. And it will bring
challenges.
Joy, but there may be some challenges, and there may be pain along the way as you and your body change to cope with it, and you find yourself here. But we're in good hands tomorrow night, aren't we? We're in good hands tomorrow night. We've got Daniel. Daniel's always excellent. I love talking to Daniel. Always excellent to listen to, and Gilda, of course. And there may be, hopefully, we'll get a bit of a tax advisor input as well by the time, but this has been this has to have been put together very quickly to meet the demand, and that's 7:30 tomorrow evening, isn't it?
It is. And what I really always appreciate about both Gilda and Daniel is that they really study the politics and try to anticipate those kinds of things. They're not just looking at it on the surface, but they're looking at it from a political point of view and a social point of view, and how it's going to be perceived nationally and internationally.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Good. And they may well stay with us for the Dream Team session, which happens every Thursday evening at 9 o'clock. That just gets better and better. And do you know what, Jackie? I'm not sure if you're aware of this news. It was quite new to me. Over on Expats Portugal, the videos have just enjoyed 1 million views. Total views of 1 million.
You mean our YouTube videos?
The YouTube channel for Expats Portugal. Yeah, isn't that incredible?
Oh my gosh, I didn't get how did you get this information?
Because
You're
I post
in with the
up
in
video.
crowd.
No, it's not that. I post up the videos and I saw a little message. Hey, congratulations! This is from YouTube themselves. Hey, congratulations! You've reached the milestone of 1 million views over on YouTube.
Oh, bravo, Carl! Carl, you're a star.
Should we pop some fizz tomorrow?
Wow, that is. Actually, we should really start the webinar with that we've hit 1 million YouTube views.
Not too bad at all. I'm quite pleased with that.
Oh, wow. So over 1 million people know now who Carl is.
Well, or one person 1 million times. You never really know. It might be my mum. Might be my mum.
I don't think so. I really don't think so.
James is one of the people who has been featured over the years over there. Good job on the Expats Portugal show this weekend. I found and watched about an hour of it after it aired. That was the cost of living special, which was very informative. Obrigado, says James, always just trying to help. And you debuted recently, didn't you, with a lovely video of a visit to Cascais Market. Tell us about that.
Oh, they want me to do another one, and it's about having a beer. My next one's about having a beer. But one of the great pleasures is the ability to buy flowers, because in the US, they're so expensive.
Right.
So I was always like, oh, I mean, you could get them in the grocery store, but yeah, they're always iffy. And I really liked lilies. And I see them in the market for like $7.50. And for me, that's such an extravagance in the States. And I just always buy them. And it's so amazing. It's one of the things I love about living in Portugal.
Yeah, cut flowers. I've noticed them. I think when I last spoke to you, you had a beautiful vase, as Americans might say, of lilies on your table, I think.
Yeah. Well, today I'm going to actually go there again to buy more flowers. But
how lovely! And the next one from you is what? Is beer? Buying a beer in Portugal?
Well, I live in Costa de Guia, and what I always love is that you don't get kicked out of a place. We've talked about this before, and so I could go with my dogs, look at the most amazing view, have one beer, have my computer, and be there all day.
Jackie, come on. I think it's time you reached the 2 beer threshold, quite frankly, after using their Wi-Fi all day long.
It's great.
I thought you said like you don't get kicked out of bars. I was thinking, is that something that happened to you in Boston? Constantly getting kicked out of bars.
No,
you didn't mean like that. Okay.
But again, if you're thinking about coming here, that's one of the things you need to lifestyle things to think about.
Yeah, that's right. Cost of living, it can get down to the numbers, and it should, of course, on occasion get down to the numbers, because there is a reality around that. But it's the value of living, isn't it, as well as the cost of living, that we can still consider here in Portugal. The people I feel sorry for, actually, are the ones who have premised their plans on pension income. And they're quite in a marginal situation where, it might change their plans completely to have to pay that extra, considerable percentage difference in their pension income. And, I guess we need to come up with some strategies for them. They might need to start a business. They thought they were retiring, but they might come to Portugal and start a business, or invest back in the US and delay their plans a couple of years, or, something along those lines. But we still want you to come. If you're a lover of this culture, come. And I hope this doesn't put you off.
And something, I think a good accountant could offer suggestions. They may say, use your US credit card for certain things. You may not get the greatest rate, but you'll save on taxes, or whatever bills you're paying in the US, stop paying with your Euro card, or it just different things. Keeping a US credit card to pay whatever bills you have there instead of, there's so many strategies to help keep our taxes down, and a good accountant could usually figure them out.
It's getting more serious on that level, isn't it? So thanks, Jackie. The link is on the screen there if you want to sign up for Expats Portugal and get priority treatment for the webinars, which you might want tomorrow night. and access to a whole bunch of discounts, perks, and so on. Join us tomorrow night at 7:30 for the NHR special and the Dream Team session thereafter. Jackie, we've got Jeremy Black joining us, as well as Heather, in a few minutes. And Jeremy is the author of A Brief History of Portugal, an indispensable guide for travelers. What would you ask a Portuguese historian? Well, he's an English historian writing about Portugal on this occasion. What question can I ask him from you?
Actually, for me, I've always been very interested in the Inquisition in Portugal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would love to know, I mean, the Portuguese king at one point tried to protect the Jews in Portugal. And so he's considered almost a hero because of how he tried to help.
Right.
And I'd love to hear anything about that.
And the alheira chicken sausage is also connected with that time in history in Portugal, which is an amazing culinary. It's a sideshow, of course, to a horrific time, but it's quite an interesting story as well. That I guess reminds us of the Portuguese love of food as well. Jackie, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow evening.
Yep.
All
I'm
right.
sorry, I'm slow here, but bye.
See you later. Adios. Adios. Okay, there goes Jackie from Experts Portugal. And let's not mess about. Let's bring Heather on because she's ready now. Scheduled for 9, but let's bring her on and see what she has to say about what are some of the things that I was talking to Jackie about just then. Nice big round of applause for Heather as well.
Hello.
Yeah, tudo bem?
Bon dia. Bon dia.
How are you?
I'm early. Can you believe it?
It's amazing. Jackie had pictures. Everything was fine technologically, and here you are early, looking fabulous, and live with us from Caldas, and you're nodding to some of the points being made there. What's your take on the NHR then, Heather?
Well, first of all, we don't know what we don't know at this point.
Yeah.
There's things are not going to be further discussed till the end of October, really, and they're not even going to be finalized till the end of November. And even then, it doesn't mean that changes couldn't occur at different times next year. So I think it's time. It's jumping the gun to make a lot of determinations. But I do agree, if you move to Portugal strictly for NHR, then your motivations are different. And I counsel people on a lot of different topics, and I definitely have talked to some people that are like really borderline prior to this announcement. And, my suggestion, if possible, is that they be in a better position, because it's not, a panacea. It's not as inexpensive as a ton of these groups and stuff, say it is. There's certain aspects that are. Overall, for me, it was housing and healthcare were huge differences from the US. And so that's what a big part of what made Portugal financially viable for me personally. And beyond that, I want to live in Europe, and I want the lifestyle, and I want to learn how to chill out a little bit. Has definitely not been happening lately.
I know.
But yeah, I think I think everyone needs to calm down a little bit.
Take a chill pill. Do you know what that's? Heather, that is so Portuguese of you. Seriously, one of the things I first heard moving to Portugal, and I think I'm a fairly relaxed fella anyway, but I would have Portuguese taxi drivers or people in shops saying calma, tranquilo.
Calma, yes.
Yeah. And there you are doing the same this morning, so it's definitely working on you.
Well, we're here, the decisions have been made in my life.
Yeah.
So I'm not going back on that. Now if you're teetering and you're trying to make decisions, then absolutely sit back and let some things play out. But if you've made the decision, or you're financially have a little bit of wiggle room there and comfort, the reality is any benefit that someone would have had under NHR is going to end after the 10 years. So if you moved here without thinking about that,
yes,
I think that's silly. Honestly, to me, I moved here without thinking about the benefit of NHR altogether, because that's what had to make sense, the long term,
Yes.
And so for me, the long term, and good luck finding a good accountant that can answer questions.
It's true, isn't it? I mean, I alluded to that. It is really difficult. It's been one of the most challenging things for me and for us as a family is this accountancy piece.
It honestly is. I have about 1 million people waiting for me to say who I recommend.
Yeah, right.
And I haven't quite figured that out yet, but I will have that figured out in the next bit here because I'm in the midst of dealing with a lot of that stuff. And one
Yeah.
of the reasons it's no fun. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of interpretation. It's like law. And so like you said, 3 accountants, 5 accountants, you're going to get all these different opinions. And
Mhm.
uh, ultimately, you have to work with who you feel most comfortable with and go from there. That's all
Course.
it is.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Jackie and Heather both have delightful energy. What about me? Glad to be here today. Cheers, Suze. You have delightful energy too, don't you? Or you need a bit of a boost this morning. If so,
Me-
you got it. You got it right here. Bobby O'Reilly's joining us soon. He's a dynamo of energy as well. So anyone who needs a jump start this morning, do join us. Heather, between you and me,
Yes.
I'm having a bit of trouble connecting to Jeremy behind the scenes.
Ah,
As well as calma and tranquilo, there is a Portuguese phrase. Have you heard this? Pau, pau, queijo, queijo, for people who are really straightforward.
pow, pow, queijo. So bread, cheese.
Yeah, it's like chop,
No.
chop. See, it's a great phrase. And for people who are quite matter of fact, it's like,
Wait,
oh, yes.
like you would just say to someone, pow, pow, queijo.
Yeah, I mean, people might say it about you. If you're dealing with Heather, with the admin of moving to Portugal, she's very pal queijo, like to the point.
I'm very, yeah, I usually get, I talked to a guy the other night and he talked to 2 attorneys and he was like, one sugar coated too much and the other one was like kind of the other direction. Whereas, I tend to get the blunt, down to earth, like reality,
blunt.
you know, real life, whatever, because I don't know how to be anything else. And I have ADHD. So I have no filter. So I kind of blurt things out. And I think that's a benefit when you deal with people with ADHD. They're not good at like BSing you.
Well, right, and I've noticed that. I have noticed that, and instead of like ADHD, it could be PPQQ, pal queijo.
Pow, pow, queijo. I love it.
I could give you that diagnosis this morning from my first experience, and it's a compliment as well. Now, I think Jeremy's a bit pal queijo. He's a very busy academic. I mean, you had to look at his list of books, didn't you? That is a phenomenal.
For 2 seconds, I did. Yeah. Just the fact that you write 1 book is kind of amazing. So, let alone like a list. Yes.
It looks like he's written hundreds of books. If we ever get him on the phone or on the screen, I'll ask him exactly how many he's written. Yeah, I think part of your pal queijo is like, oh God, he writes about war and the Holocaust. We've had pets dying yesterday.
Yeah, and Heather said no taxes, no pets, no Holocaust. Like I'm just, I got enough going on in my life that I can't, and I'm not saying I don't, I'm Jewish, whatever.
I'm with you.
And so it's these things are super important. I get it, but like I only have so much bandwidth right now, and I'm dealing with taxes, back taxes of my mother who isn't around anymore, like yada yada. And so with all these changes, all the visa files that, kind of went up in the air and things that have changed and people have had to push back appointments and whatnot because we have different, income requirements are getting stricter on things. With all of that, I have enough drama in my life without, social drama.
You make a very good point. You make a very good point. That at the moment, it could be quite easy to become quite depressed and down about.
It's
ourselves to what's going on.
Yeah, it's a crazy time. Mercury is not in retrograde, but I did actually check the other day, and it's always bad when I check because that means there's enough crap going on. That I'm like, wait, Mercury, like something's going on. And I don't know enough about all the other planet stuff, but I will say there's definitely a lot of weird stuff going on in the world, just everywhere, and we're no exception. So I think it's time to stay focused. And it's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, which was about community and building community. And it's one of the biggest things to keep from being depressed and lonely and moving here. And, that's really been a focus that I've been kind of stewing over how best to bring that to light, which doing things like the expat meetup in Caldish, which is scheduled for next Tuesday. It's the third Tuesday of the month. If you're traveling or going to be in the area, feel free to let me know. We meet at Cabaret Voltaire, which is an awesome local lounge. If you haven't been there, they have a lot of live music, 6 to 8 p.m. on Tuesday night, the 17th. So, that's a great way and place to not only talk to people that live here, but talk to people that are traveling and scouting and considering, or just on vacation and want to chat up some other people. But you're doing a ton towards building community, Carl, and I think that's really such a huge thing that kind of we have in common. Thanks for posting that. We are Ready Leonardo Animal Shelter. We're also taking donations and food and whatnot for them. So on a regular basis, they rescue cats and dogs.
You make a brilliant point. Let's come back to building community. And James, I'm sure will have something to say about this, because he has said something about this before on building community before you get here. In fact, I think he made the point on the cost of living webinar last Thursday. But let's just give everyone the details on this. This coming Tuesday, next Tuesday of next week, 17th of October, between 6 and 8 at the brilliantly named Cabaret Voltaire Lounge in Rua Alexandria Herculano. And that's Caldas de Reña, of course. And I thought it said bring your dog and cat. I don't think it's a good idea, is it, for people to bring their
Well, they actually do welcome pets to some extent, but yeah, it might be, a little chaotic. It's not, it's a lounge.
Okay.
And just to be clear, locals are welcome. It's not, expat immigrant specific. One of the owners of the bar is a local Portuguese guy who's awesome. And so anybody really truly is welcome, and we'd love to have a mixture of people.
Yes, yeah, and this is you'll get to see Caldas de Reña if you make especially a plan to make a journey from out of town, if you like. And sometimes people do this because we can talk about our lovely day trip we went on last Friday, it was mainly Silver Coast people. But somebody had come from a little bit further up the Silver Coast in Figueira de Foz and stayed overnight. So I think it's worth sometimes making a trip of this, isn't it? If people could come along to your meetup and spend a couple of days in Caldas de Reña, and they won't be disappointed doing that, will they?
Right. They can even stay at my Airbnb, which is the downstairs part of my house. And so, that's kind of a cool thing. Definitely for scouting and stuff, because, I've learned a lot having bought this house and done an extensive remodel, and, my background in real estate broker in Arizona and all that kind of stuff. So there's some side benefits there, but I think it's awesome. I think Caldish is, this whole region is really amazing, and it brings, I think, a lot to Portugal overall. So absolutely. Come on out.
Why is wet food preferred?
Okay, so the reason wet food is prepared and in small packets is because they give medicine. So when there's animals that need medicine, they have to give it like twice a day, 3 times a day in wet food. And so what she was telling me is they have some large cans of wet food they got, but that's not as good because, canned wet food, if you open the can, it's only good for a few days. So if they get the packets, that's really helpful for cats or dogs that they're giving medication to. They can open a packet, split it with a couple animals that need meds, put it in the meds, or put the meds in the wet food. And, that's good. But, any sort of supplies, everything from cleaning to cash, obviously, is welcome, because it's an often overlooked rescue. And they're really wonderful, wonderful people. And I got my kitty there. My 3-legged kitty was recently down to 3 legs, and he's amazing. And he'll have to be a special guest another time.
We'd love to meet him. So there you go. Not only is it a chance to meet new people and see some familiar faces, because I think that's another important part of the meetups. It's a chance to support a local charity, Rede Leonardo there, and that's an animal shelter in Caldas de Reña. So there you go. That's next Tuesday, 17th of October. One of many emerging meetups around Portugal. We have our lunchtime meetup this afternoon, or this lunchtime.
Yes.
The clue is in the name. Lunchtime meetup between 1 and 3 in San Martino de Porto. We have a meetup weekend planned in Tamar this weekend, and I have got mixed feelings about expat meetups, quite honestly, and I think there is a danger of them becoming a little bit sort of exclusive and cliquey. One of the first ones I went to, I really didn't enjoy. I wasn't made welcome. That poor me. I'm not meaning to sound like a spoiled brat or anything, but it was like no effort seemed to be made to host the thing or to welcome us in.
Welcome people that come
Yeah.
in. I welcome everybody. I put a name tag on you and bring you in and try to introduce you to people. So
Right.
yeah, I don't think I often have parties and open up the whole house and invite anybody that's willing to come, and so I don't think that's certainly something that we would represent, because we really believe in diversity and bringing lots of people in. But you're right, and it's one of the reasons that we feel like more meetups and more different things like that are needed, is because there is a lot of saturation, there is a lot of clickiness already, and you can only comfortably have so many people at an event, and it gets really out of hand and too many. And so we really need some other avenues. So we're talking about all sorts of things, from wine type things. We're doing, actually, we started a stitch and bitch, which is like get together, make crafts. We do, my fiance and I do like cosplay, steampunk and stuff like that. So it's an opportunity to work on costumes and make stuff. So embroider, I do the medieval recreation stuff, and so it's just opportunity to sit around with your friends and chat. But that's hard because you already have 5-6 people, and you're kind of like filled up, because you're going to fill up someone's living room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we need to have a lot of different things like that, or multiple groups, different people getting inspired, game nights, things like that, because people need the connection.
Yep. Well, I'm going to next month in November, our regular venue. If anyone wants to start up a meetup, actually, we could maybe give people tips to start meetups in their own location. If you want some help with that, I think it's fair to say Heather and I are naturals at this, perhaps you might say.
Yeah.
But I'm also quite low maintenance, formulaic with mine.
Me too. Like,
yeah, I don't want it to become too demanding. So, there's nothing to pay.
Right.
There's no RSVP. It's on at the same time every week at the same venue, and you come and you buy something from the cafe, your choice from the menu at Palmera. And we've made friends with Nelson, the owner. He's just a family friend now,
Cool.
and he's a friend to most people who come to the meetups on a regular basis. Really lovely fella, and so, sometimes it will be a small handful of people. It might be 4-6 people who've come on a quiet day, and we'll have lunch together and look at the view and have a great time. And it might all be done and dusted in an hour and a half. Then there are those afternoons where people have arrived at, early at midday, and they're still drinking at 6 in the afternoon, and they're thinking about where to go next for dinner. And there might have been, 10, 20, 30 people in the restaurant and across the deck outside. So we never know, and I'm fine with that. But that's the formula, meet at the same time, same place. If you only want to do it once a month, it could be the first Tuesday, the last Friday, something like that. But it gets a habit going. Would you agree, Heather, that it's quite good to have a habit and a routine with these things?
Yeah, I think it's the only way to really do it, because otherwise, your calendar gets full, and just it's hard to get things scheduled if you just don't schedule it. And so you really kind of need to do that. But it doesn't need to be, like you said, anything ultra complicated. And if somebody does any sort of meetup, you're welcome to friend me on Facebook. I'm just under Heather Binder. I have 3,000 followers or something, many of which are not in Portugal, but I have good exposure and things like that. And so I can help get the word out if you have something like that. It does not need to be anything fancy.
That's really kind. Yeah.
Yeah, it just needs to get out there. And the more opportunity we have for people to get together like that, the less isolated people are going to feel. And
Yes.
that's really key to success in Portugal, success anywhere, but definitely in a new country with a challenging language.
And maybe planning a meetup. For our November Discovery Weekend has, I think, 3 couples coming from the United States and
Oh,
factoring it
great.
into their scouting tour. So
Nice.
you come to the meetups as part of your scouting trip, and you'll get to meet people who actually live here and can talk to you from their personal experience. That's the main thing, isn't it? Is
Right.
talking to other human beings comfortably in the same language most of the time.
Hmm.
You might not be on the same wavelength, but you at least have the same language, and you'll get the testimony, the personal experience of people, won't you? Rather than having to read everything on a social media group and get into an argument. You can get
Yeah.
into an argument in real life.
No arguments. Come on. Like
I'm joking.
we're chilling out, you know? Yeah, no, it's good. And I think that that's key because you need to vet the information that you're getting.
Yeah.
And when I was in the process of relocating, I worked with a professional, but I also had a couple friends that I had made online that are still friends in person. And they were people I knew were intelligent. I knew they researched. I knew I felt like I could be comfortable in the information that I was getting from them. And they had just done it themselves.
Yeah.
And that was super helpful because the help I got was limited. It was visa specific, but it was limited. And so, these relationships just made such a huge difference and impact that I really am a supporter.
Excellent stuff. Okay, we've got all sorts of things going on in the chat. I'm still trying to manage the arrival also. Good morning to you, Eliane. Let's say a few hellos. I'm still trying to manage the arrival of Jeremy. I'm starting to think it's not going to happen, quite honestly. Eliane is here. Good morning to you. Sarah is here. Suze, of course. And Daniel F, who's answering your question, Darren. If you deliver your tax declaration in Portugal, you should get back 15% of the rent paid to a top amount of €502. You'll get relief of that, won't you, off your bill? You won't be paid 15% of it back, literally, I don't think. And there are maximums across all kinds of spending headings, including veterinary bills, shopping, all sorts of things, DIY purchases. That's why they're asking you for your NIF number. Would you agree, Heather?
That is why they're asking you for NIF, and that is good to get. But I also preface it with I'm not a professional and do not get tax advice or even information, in my opinion, from Facebook groups, even from Good Morning Portugal, unless it's actually coming from tax advisors and professionals.
Well said. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm just assuming that when people look and listen to me, they know I'm not a professional. But yes.
Well, I've had a couple people accusing me of, that. And it's one of the, saying oh, I'm posing as a professional, whatever. Professional to me is an attorney, a CPA, and I am a real estate broker, but that's in Arizona specifically. I did do real estate here for 2 seconds till I realized how it goes. And
I remember those days.
And needless to say, yeah, right. I'm a professional in my own experience, and that's really, I like to stay in my lane, and I feel like that's important. That's really important.
I'm not even a professional in my own existence. I'm an amateur. I'm a good amateur, is what I would.
Yes,
I'm an aspiring amateur in my own reality. Hold on a minute, Heather. I've got a child in the studio. What's up, mate?
Uh-oh.
It's Wednesday, October 11th. It is. There is the date from young Solomon, everybody. Thank you for that.
Solomon. Good name.
Do you do the weather? Oh, he's gone. Okay. See, Jeremy couldn't connect with us. He's so pal Keja. And flipping Michael Heron, who said, oh, we've got to get this guy on the show and chat to him. Michael Heron blows me out. He's doing something else this morning while I've got trying to get Jeremy on. Can't do StreamYard. Got to do Teams or Zoom or whatever. And now he's being coy, giving me his telephone number. If we ever get him on, it'll be a miracle. This morning, it might have to be another time. But I would commend to you the brief. We got Bobby O'Reilly joining us in the background too. I thought that might have been Jeremy moment. I think Jeremy is not giving me his phone number. Jeremy, if you are there, he has given me his phone number. We're going to be calling Exeter now. We're going to do this live and see if we can get Jeremy on the phone. Goodness knows, only knows how this is going to go this morning. We'll come
Carl, I just have to say you're impressive, like how you do all of this. So I know I'm not the only one out there impressed with your multitasking skills.
Well, thank you for that, but we haven't got the guest on yet. So let's
well, you know, that's why you brought me on, because I can chat about whatever or nothing or everything under the sun for God knows how long. So it's all good.
Okay. I'm about, it's like, I love it on those old TV shows where they say, okay, we're calling them now. It's ringing, or it should be.
It's ringing. I like how you got the tone. You got the serious.
Can you hear it ringing, Heather?
Oh, I did hear something.
That's perfect then. We can.
Oh, that sounds really.
Good morning. Is that Mr. Jeremy Black?
It is, and I'm ready to go.
Oh, you're live on the Good Morning Portugal show, Jeremy. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you, and I'm imagining it's warmer in Portugal than it is here.
Yes, I can't tell a lie. It is. It's lovely here this morning. You are in my home city, or I have lived in Exeter and had many wonderful years in Devon and Exeter. How is Exeter this morning?
Exeter's fine. I mean, it's the part of England that I suppose is closest to Portugal, in the sense that it actually has white Italianate style, Mediterranean style buildings and a bit of sun, but it doesn't have weather as good, and the food isn't as good as in Portugal.
Oh, you sound like a fan. Now, Jeremy, I was wondering, Heather's here as well. She may chip in with a question. You are a history guy. Possibly more than you're a Portugal guy. Is that correct? You know, your expertise is in the world of history.
That's correct. The reason you've got me on is because I've written a brief history of Portugal, published by Robinson, and it's part of a series I did of those countries I liked. So I've also done ones of Italy and Spain, though I prefer Portugal to Spain, and of France, and of Germany, and of the Med. And I've got one, and of the Atlantic, actually. And Portugal shows up in the Portuguese world, you know, Brazil, Angola shows up in the one of the Atlantic. And what I've tried to do is to do with so few, you know, I'm a proper historian. I was professor of history first at Durham and then at Exeter, and I've written lots of heavyweight books on subjects like military history and so on.
Yes.
But I also try and write unusually accessible books. So the one on Portugal is a book without footnotes. It's designed to be read for relaxation, and it says underneath it at the bottom, indispensable for travelers. Well, it's designed to tell travelers to Portugal about the history of the country, but also, in a way, it provides a history written by an outsider, which is useful because, as you know, in Portugal, their history is very politicized.
Oh, yeah.
People's views on Salazar or anti-Salazar, people's views for the 19th century on the radicals or the non-radicals, so on and so forth. And what is useful is to stand back a bit and to try and produce a nation's history in a broader context, and to try and explain why there are different points of view. It's not much help to say this point of view is right or that point of view is wrong, because that doesn't help you, because lots of people won't agree. Yeah. It's more important to look why there are different points of view and why there's different public memorialization of the past.
Absolutely brilliant. And I'm so glad I'm not calling you from Spain or France, as it turns out. You clearly like Portugal specifically. And you have written a brilliant guide here for people who are considering coming here to live or to travel. It's such a good primer. It starts in the Stone Age, doesn't it? And then brings us up to almost a couple of decades ago.
Yeah, no, it brings us up actually to the present. I mean, because, well, in a way, all of us are interested in the future, but the past is the only, as it were, data set. But also the past leaves its mark across Portugal. You've got everything there from prehistoric remains, which can be visited, as I discuss in the book, Romans, quite extensive Roman stuff. You've got a little bit of Visigothic, that's the post-Roman Christians. Then you've got the Islamic imprint. Then you've got the Reconquest. And then you've got the successive ages of building, architecture, and history. And it's worth bearing in mind that from the late 16th century, Portugal was the first of the great world empires. Now, there were other world empires like China or ancient Rome, which ruled large contiguous areas, but the Portuguese, of course, were a transoceanic empire. And, by 1560, when obviously things started to go pear-shaped, and in 1580 the Spaniards took over, or Philip II of Spain became Philip I of Portugal. But prior to that, the Portuguese had established an imperial presence around Africa, in Brazil, in India, in what is now Indonesia, and they had trading links into China at Macau and into Japan at Nagasaki. And this was quite astonishing. Now, the Portuguese then had this rather dire period. King Sebastian stupidly invaded Morocco in 1578, got himself involved in a civil war there. He gets killed, his army gets destroyed, the Portuguese succession, as it were, runs out. The Spaniards take over. And there's this period from 1580 to 1640, which again is a period which it's difficult to get people to accept that there are contrasting views on. But in 1640, the Spaniards, Philip IV gets kicked out, Philip IV of Spain, that is, get kicked out, War of Independence, and from then on, Portugal is an independent country. And has a fascinating history as, this world empire. And the world empire really continues. I mean, obviously in the 19th century, the largest colony of all, Brazil, is lost at the same time as Spain loses its mainland Latin American colonies. But even thereafter, Portugal, till the 1970s, remains one of the, European imperial powers. And these days, people are expected to apologize, etc., but that's totally ahistorical. It would have meant absolutely nothing to the Portuguese of the age. And I'm not sure it's very helpful to be ahistorical. As I used to say to my students, people in 300 years' time, maybe 100 years' time, might regard us all as war criminals for eating meat, but it doesn't help. I eat meat, I ought to tell you, but that doesn't help judging the 20th century or the early 21st century. You need to judge societies on their own terms in order to understand them, as opposed to preach to them.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. Could listen to you all day, Jeremy. It's great to have you here. I want to talk to you specifically about some of the things you love about Portugal, as a person, as a visitor. I wanted to ask you first, though, at the beginning, and I forgot to do this. How many books have you actually written?
Oh, I've got the world record for the number of history books written. It's about 185. It's a crime to treat.
What?
No, you can look me up on Wikipedia. But by the way, I'm not the Jeremy Black who's a pornographic star in America. So
okay, goodbye. We thought it was you. We're not interested in talking to you anymore. No,
yeah, absolutely. I can fully understand. But I was once sent. I was really amused by this. I was once sent an article. This man gave an interview in which it said, and I loved this, Jeremy is also a thinker, and I loved that one. But no, that's not me, unfortunately. I might have had a more interesting life. Certainly one that would have been better seen. I started off. I was an undergraduate at Cambridge, postgraduate at Oxford, went to Durham in 1980 and taught there from 80 to 2015, eventually as professor. Then I went to Exeter, which was warmer. And taught there till I retired just at the beginning of 2020. And I'm still writing books at the present moment. I'm writing, in fact, a transport history of Britain at the moment. But it keeps me off the streets and also means I enjoy giving podcasts. And there's loads of free podcasts on my website. You can look up my website. There's loads and loads and loads of free podcasts on all sorts of historical topics. I'm currently doing a series on geopolitics, for example.
We will do that. What is your website?
I can't remember what it's bloody well called. Just look me up.
Yeah, but
you don't expect me.
I can find it. I can find it.
To know my own mobile. I don't know my own mobile.
No, fair enough. Sorry for all the silly questions. Yeah, but
don't worry. Don't worry. What do I like about Portugal? I think the people are very relaxed. I like the fact that, in contrast to Spain, it's got more trees. It's got It's not got a bleached out feel to it. I like the food, which I think is amazing. I like the way in which most of the cities are very compact and you can easily walk around them. I like the fact that the Portuguese like the British, which you know is very pleasant, and is relatively unusual these days, one has to say, in the world.
True.
I like the fact that you can fly to Porto and Lisbon and get on public transport and get into the city centre. I think there's all sorts of things that are very... But now, obviously, I'm not a fool. I know it has a contentious internal politics like we do in Britain.
Yes.
But, you know, I know that there are issues. I know people are concerned about the price of property, you know, in Porto and in Lisbon. I'm well aware of all of those. I'm not a fool. But it's as a place to visit, it has an enormous number of attractions.
It does. And your favourite food or wine, Jeremy?
I like the wine, the Albarino wines. I like those. I like ginger, you know, with the cherry stones in.
Yes.
I like eels. Actually, I've had lovely eels in wonderful sauces in Portugal, and eels which used to be quite big in Britain. You know, nowadays you don't get much eel, and it always comes in the same congealed mess in Britain. I like the Portuguese fish, though I don't particularly like salted cod. I like pork, and I think the way that the Portuguese do their pork is very good. I'm not so wild keen on their beef. I like, you know, I mean, there's lots and lots of good things in Portuguese food.
It's been so...
I love tomatoes spread on bread, you know, for breakfast. That's something I do in Britain. I take a slice of sourdough bread and put, you know, some squash and tomatoes on it.
Okay, I'll be trying that. You know? Yeah, you get great tomatoes here. We were eating tomatoes from our garden. Have you got a question for Heather? Bobby O'Reilly's joining us on the screen as well. You can guess where he's from, Jeremy. But Bobby, good morning to you. Heather, do you have any questions for Jeremy?
Good morning.
He probably has to go and write another book.
I'm just going to say I didn't expect him to be so funny. And he reminds me of Robin Leach from Lifestyles, the Rich and Famous.
Okay, there you go, Jeremy. I don't know if you've had that comparison before. Good morning to you, Bobby. Do you have a question?
No, I haven't. No. I think, look, can I just say, I think you've got to try and laugh, because otherwise one should be crying all the time, you know?
Right.
Yes, we have some pretty intense topics.
I'll be 68 later this month, and quite frankly, the knee, you know, when I get up in the morning, the knees and the joints sound like a symphony orchestra going off, all the, you know, creaks and things. So you've just got to try and be positive. And one of the reasons I write books also is to keep my mind alert. What I find is so depressing about old people is, okay, they're like me, their body's going crap, but their minds, they become old farts, particularly the men. The only conversation they have is, you know, whatever they're repeating from the Telegraph or the Guardian, or, you know, some boring talk about somebody snubbing them at a golf club, and who the hell cares? And what they need to do is get their minds engaged. And one of the great things about reading is it keeps, and, you know, it's great to read, including if you think what the person reading or giving a lecture on is wrong. Yeah. That's great. I mean, I gave 3 lectures at Gibraltar last month, which was great fun. I lectured on James Bond, and I lectured on geopolitics in Gibraltar. And I happen to think the lectures were pretty good. But I wouldn't mind if somebody came out of them and said, there are 3 things he's got wrong, because it shows their brain has been fired up. That's the key thing. And you see, too many people have got a brain like plasticine, and they're not creating new thoughts. They're not reacting they're not reacting themselves. They're just taking it in passively as if they were a baby, and that's just ridiculous.
Well said.
So no, I enjoy doing that. It keeps my mind alert. I mean, you know, at 2:00 I've got to do a podcast for the New Books Network in the States on how I, as a military historian, you know, see the new war just started in the Middle East. So that's fascinating. So I'll have to answer their questions and think it through. And that's fascinating. That's good for me. You know, doing the James Bond talks in Gibraltar. I gave 2 on those, and that was again great. James Bond politics, how the novels fit in, how they changed to the. I've written a couple of books on Fleming, how the novels fitted into the changing world that is then depicted in the films. It's fascinating. It's interesting, and the questions from the audience. Sometimes you don't know the answers. That's great.
Jeremy,
it makes you think. It makes you go away and think.
Love everything you've said. Darren does too. He said he's popping to the shop to get some tomatoes now. Now there is a Portugal connection with James Bond, and perhaps we can,
He spent time at Estoril, of course. Yes. Estoril was, Lisbon as itself, was a great listening station during the war because it was neutral. And the point is there were other neutral places, obviously Stockholm, for example, and Zurich and Bern in Switzerland. But the problem with these Swedish and Swiss listening stations, neutral powers, is very difficult to get to them, for the Allies. To get to Switzerland, you had to cross Axis territory, for example. But the point about Lisbon is that German and Italian agents could readily get there across Spain. British and American agents could readily fly in. And there were loads of emigres and refugees there as well. So it was one of the major listening stations. So there was a big Adfair station there, military intelligence. There was a big Italian military intelligence one. And the British were also there in spades. And what you get therefore is an enormous interest in traffic that comes out of Lisbon, because there's the possibility of picking up rumors, picking up even real news, which you've, acquired listening to people or trying to get them drunk at casinos and such like. And for the British, it was very useful as a listening station, and that's the reason Fleming was there. Also, of course, Lisbon was a way in which you could fly, not with complete safety. There was always the danger of a long-range German air interceptor taking off from Brittany, but you could fly with reasonable safety to Lisbon and then fly on from Lisbon to the Caribbean, to South America, down the west coast of Africa, and as it were, reach out into the wider world. So it was very important as a transit station for the Brits as well.
We would love to get you here. Bobby, who's tuned in as well. You won't be able to see who's on the screen here, but Bobby's with us, Heather's with us, and our audience are enraptured listening to you.
Well, I'm always happy to go to places to give talks as long as people pay my fare and look after me. I like to be like a parcel, wrapped up and nicely unwrapped at the other end.
Do you know what? We should think about that and get you
But not as a porn star. I'm afraid I don't want to disillusion you.
Well, yeah, that's the problem with you saying just look me up on the internet. We've actually got your website address. It's jeremyblackhistorian.wordpress.com, not jeremyblackpornographyactor.com. Be careful with your search history when it comes to this man. Bobby and I do the Englishman, the Irishman, and this weekend 2 Brummies walk into a bar. Perhaps Jeremy, what do you think, Bobby? An Englishman, an Irishman, historian walk into a bar. Should we get Jeremy over?
I think it'd be brilliant, to be honest, yeah.
Okay, so I think that's an invitation from us to Good Morning Portugal, Herdad de Mayo, your home, Dynasty Homes here to bring you over and record a conversation with you, Jeremy. You've been amazing this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Great pleasure, and I hope listeners, look, listeners, you don't have to buy my books. You ought to be able to get them in libraries, but they are designed for you. They're not designed for other academics. They reflect academic knowledge, but it's designed to be made accessible, and too few people are doing that. The other thing is too many bloody books are too long. I can't stand long books. This book comes in at 242 pages, and none of the pages are too big. They're all the same size. What a surprise!
Get it on audiobook. Get it on audiobook and listen to it.
But you see, for example, the latest J.K. Rowling Cameron Stride one, is 1,000 pages long. I mean, you drop it from the first floor of your house, you're going to kill somebody on ground level. It's just ridiculous writing books of that length. Anyway, my friends, you look after yourselves, have a drink, and I hope to meet you. Cheers,
likewise. Ciao, ciao. Bye for
Cheers.
now.
Ciao.
Take care.
What a legend.
Okay, if you bring him over, I can put him up in the Airbnb downstairs. Because that guy's funny. Didn't expect that.
I didn't. I mean, you could hear me moaning, couldn't you? Like Michael Heron's dropped me right in it here. The blokes can't. I can't do Zoom. I can't do Teams. I can't. You got it. And then we get him on the phone, and he's an absolute legend there. Bobby, how are you this morning?
Good. I actually enjoyed very much listening to him as well. Really good, really sharp, and really knows his insights. And I didn't know actually you squeeze the tomatoes on the bread over here. I know I do it in Spain. I haven't seen it in Portugal.
Well, it's a great service. One of many things many takeaways that we can enjoy from the interview with him this morning. That was great. Let's get him back and chat with him. I mean, you can imagine, can't you? I mean, this is what 20 to 10 in the morning. Can you imagine what he's like after a few beers or glasses of wine? It'll be incredible.
That's a party waiting to happen, right?
It
there.
is. Do you know each other? Have you? I don't think you've met on screen before.
No. Hi.
Hi, Bobby. Good to meet you.
Nice
Bobby, we got video from last night. We haven't given away what was happening there. Let me just play a couple of clips for anyone who wasn't with us early on and find out from you what was going on at the airport.
What was all that?
Hold on a minute. They've got another one. Heather, do you recognize the room?
I wasn't paying much attention to the actual room. No. But is sports related or something?
Lisbon Airport. If you'd arrived back last night at about 8 o'clock on a flight, just minding your own business, and you heard that outside, it could have been quite terrifying. What was it, Bobby?
Yeah, it was the Portuguese rugby team coming home.
The rugby team. Okay.
And it was the rugby fans, if you like, appreciating what they had achieved in the Rugby World Cup, which we had spoken about before the World Cup started. And we weren't giving them much. We were saying if they get a try, it'd be a big deal, that kind of way.
Yeah, right.
They actually bet Fiji in their last game, in the last minute of the game. They nearly bet Georgia. They drew with Georgia. They gave Australia and Wales a great game as well.
Yeah.
So basically, in rugby terms, it was sort of a bit like, I would say, Lisbon United or something like this, beating Inter Milan, if you know what I mean. So it's or even Aroueda United beating Inter Milan. That's how big a deal this was. And it wasn't just that. What I really noticed, I was actually there picking up my son who arrived in last night at the same time. But I am a huge rugby fan, and I watched every game that Portugal had played and screaming at the TV for every one of them. They were that good. I was really blown away by how good they were in each game. Because it wasn't expected. But one thing I noticed that everybody there, and there was thousands of people there, they all seemed to know each other. It was a very close community that all these people weren't there a bit like, say, like the soccer fans who just know of the actual players and are sort of in awe of the players. But it looked like everybody knew each other, because obviously rugby's not that big in Portugal, and it was well, it's not as big as, say, as you would say in soccer terms and so on and so forth, as say football, but it is a huge community. It's a huge family community. And I know a couple of rugby players as well that were in the Portugal team before. And it was always a difficult sport for them to promote in Portugal, obviously, because it plays a very second fiddle with regards to the soccer, So, but I was really, really impressed by how everybody, you can see everyone in the airport all hugging each other. And I'm talking about the people that were there waiting. How are you? One guy actually came up, I was standing beside a guy. And one of the one of the guys came out in his suit, and there was a guy beside me, and he started to shake his hand and he hugged me. And he thought I was with him, and he shook my hand.
That's wonderful.
What can I do?
Yeah.
Well done.
Enjoy the hug, enjoy the moment. What an incredible atmosphere. And
Brilliant,
I think a phrase that kept coming up is they gave a good account of themselves. I mean, that is an understatement, isn't it? I mean, it's true, and but it's an understatement. They are heroic. Francis sent us this. I don't know if you saw this, Bobby, but the call sign of the flight was Lobos. They are Osh Lobos, the wolves. and they played out of their skin, was how Colin put it when I was with him on Sunday watching it at Caldas Rugby Club. The atmosphere in there was incredible among that group of people watching the last match against Fiji. So superb, good times then for Portuguese rugby, and that will help for the next World Cup. They're building, aren't they? Like World Cup after World Cup.
Hopefully. They obviously got some great coaching over the last couple of years, and I know even Ireland came over to play prior to the World Cup, and there was even a thing. The Irish were even saying, "Listen, the Portugal team is really going to impress. Everyone's going to put it up to everyone, and so on." And people thought, "Nah," that kind of way. Like the last game I saw between Portugal out before the World Cup was actually Portugal playing Romania. Now they did beat them, but they lost the first half badly and came back and won the second half. Now Romania would be another tier under them again, So to see what they did to the number 8 team in the world, to Fiji, and to beat Fiji, and not a fluke. It was by no way a fluke. Right. It wasn't one of these things that just like say. It was Japan in the last World Cup, if you know what I mean. This is who Portugal was this time. So, yeah, well done. And hopefully they build on it. And hopefully now somebody starts throwing money at them to bring it on and keep them playing in Tier 1 competitions. That's really where it needs to be.
Yeah, well, they're home now and having a well-deserved rest, which saves you the problem of who to support. Should it be Ireland or Portugal? Ireland, do you still think you're going to win?
I do.
Right. Okay.
I really do.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm on a lot of the All Blacks sort of forums, if you like, about rugby as well, because I love the All Blacks, and we're playing them on Saturday, as you know. And I genuinely believe the All Blacks also know. They're trying to talk up the game like the Scots did last week, that they knew how to break us down and so on and so forth. But I also feel it that the All Blacks know they're going to get beaten next week.
Very good. So will you be going to Dublin Airport when they return home triumphant? I mean, can you imagine the atmosphere in Dublin if they go home triumphant?
I'm even contemplating going to Paris if it gets to the final. I've actually a friend going to watch the game with me here for the semi-final. He's actually after getting flights now to go to, or not flights, after getting tickets to go to the game, to go to the actual game in Paris. So and asked me did I want to go, and I said I can't go because I'm filming.
Sorry about that.
And he had
we are, aren't we? Looking forward to this weekend. We'll be in Tamar. It'll be the Englishman, the Irishman, and 2 Brummies. And I think we're getting requests now to join us. An American girl as well, an Englishman, Irishman, an American, but a girl. Best pub jokes, and many I don't even understand. We'll talk you through them. Veronica, I just invited myself to a boys' pub night. See what you did there. Very good. Now, it'll be unforgivable. I know we're in high spirits now. We had a great time talking to Jeremy. But I can't not ask you about the NHR news because we haven't spoken, Bob. You haven't been on our screen here at Good Morning Portugal and responded to the scrapping of the NHR scheme. I imagine you've had a few phone calls.
Yeah, it wasn't unexpected, to be honest with you. Like there's been murmurings around the ditching of the NHR for a long time, and actually I was surprised it wasn't ditched before the Golden Visa even, because there was, I suppose, probably a better argument with regards to why the Golden Visa go and why it was sort of poking so many people. The NHR was by far a lot more successful program than the Golden Visa in the numbers wise. I don't know the numbers, but I know like if you look at even from the French side of it and so on and so forth, and from a European side of it, a lot of people ended up moving their tax residency to Portugal and had been very, very, very successful. But I could also see where it sort of poked a stick in the eye of the locals, where they were imagining that all these rich people are coming over here and not paying tax, and we have to pay tax, etc. Yeah. What we're missing, and what everybody still seems to be missing, is that when wealthy people live here, they spend money here. And that means that every penny they spend, 23% of it's taxed anyway, through stealth taxes, etc. And they buy things that pay salaries and keep businesses moving and so on and so forth. So I think actually a bit like your last speaker, Jeremy, had to say, was you have to look at things from everyone's point of view for sure, and in context as well. So I can understand how it would poke people in the eye, but not understanding what it's doing for them. At the same time, and then if you look at it from the other side of it, it's like, well, look, we're bringing all this money in, and we're spending all the money in this country, and we are actually adding to society and so on and so forth. We're not just coming over here to bleed the country dry.
Yeah.
So I think that the programs that were brought out for a reason, to bring people here for a tax take, but it was a different form of tax take. And it brought taxes and people to spend money into Portugal that otherwise wouldn't have done it. Like, I think the French was by far the biggest uptakers of the NHR. And Mr. Hollande, who declared a 70% tax, I think it was 70% was the tax bracket for the wealthy in France, and also something like on the wealth taxes on their properties and so on. He ran them out of France rather than the Portuguese sort of attracted them. But the one thing that I'm very mindful is that we're in competition with lots and lots of other countries within the world, and Europe especially, to attract the type of people here that can add to the economy and that can add to society and so on and so forth. And I think that from my point of view, that you get politically bullied in a sense that you're forced to sort of make a decision that's going to please the voter rather than actually help the voter.
Yes, exactly. What a brilliant distinction. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Bobby, because it's so overlooked that the wealthy are the investors. The wealthy are the ones coming in and taking these dilapidated buildings and turning them into units that are rentable or sellable, or, doing all this stuff. And it just really aggravates me to, it's just always this negative, and people aren't seeing the huge amounts of money coming in that are paying people and that are actually affecting people in a positive way. And it is a lot of lip service, all this, a lot of this political stuff.
Well, if it works in reverse now and people start to leave Portugal, because just an example, the tax take is going to drop significantly. And one of my sort of things, even when I was talking to Golden Visa investors years and years ago, that they were saying, like, what happens if they end this program? And I was saying, well, I can't really see them ending the program because it brings in so much money that pays for the social agenda that they want to portray. And like, where are they going to get the money if they stop it? And you're talking about billions upon billions upon billions. So, but they stopped it. And well, they didn't stop it, they changed it. And they've changed it to a point where it's not really interesting for investors to do it. So now I was actually in Beirut the other day. I was flying out, and there's a huge big sign in the Lebanese airport, Beirut airport, Golden Visa Greece. And not only was it Golden Visa Greece, but it was, you could buy a property and pay it over a 5-year period by paying such and such and so on. So they were making it very obtainable. Bulgaria has it, Hungary has it, lots of countries have it. And you will see that a lot of countries also have tax incentives for wealthy people to move there as well. So one thing is that we seem to forget, we're in competition, as in Portugal's in competition for that investment. And it's one thing to get a big, huge corporate company to come in and do a big investment, build a factory and create loads of jobs and all that kind of stuff, which is good. But a lot of the time, those people's head offices are in the likes of Dublin and so on and so forth, where they actually get away with corporate tax that's 10%. But they're using the low salary base in other countries to get the work done, let's say.
Yeah.
Where if you have people who move here and live here and buy cars here, by the way, and if you know, anyone who's bought a car in Portugal knows that we're probably about 20 or 30% higher than anywhere else in Europe, illegally, by the way. And the Portuguese government just continue to pay the fine because they don't want to see their car industry stepped on by Spain, because you don't want to drive into Spain and buy a car for 20% or 30% cheaper than you can buy it in Portugal, and that's their argument. But it actually goes against the whole open market thing. Where I see the NHR going, well, obviously it's going, but I still think what you were saying earlier on, what Heather was saying even, was that a lot of people will still, wasn't Heather, sorry, before that, to move to Portugal to save money is probably not the best reason to do so. But for people to invest in Portugal who are not moving here, that is a different kettle of fish altogether. So for me, the NHR and the D7s and so on and so forth, it shouldn't be affected too much with regards to people that want to move to Portugal. Yes, it is a de-incentive that, for example, Americans especially, who will now have to pay tax in both places, where regardless where they live in the world, you have to pay your American tax. And the big incentive in Portugal was that, well, I have to pay it in America, but at least I don't have to pay any more here, which was sort of like the big part of it. But that gave them more money to spend. And that meant that they had more to spend, and they were paying 23% tax on everything they spent.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, but I don't think it's going to make a huge difference to the amount of people that's going to move here. I think what will happen is, because the biggest market was the French market by far, and the American market had started to grow. But I think the American market is looking at Portugal for a completely different reason. A lot of it's to do with America, not Portugal.
Yes. Yeah, I just saw an Economist article about that, about, saying exactly that. People are moving away from America rather than, well, they're choosing Portugal, but their main motivation is to be moving away from America, from the United States. Yeah, well said, Bobby. And yeah, we are coming to the end of the show. There are a few things I wanted to bring back in, because we were making the point earlier, Bobby, about the importance of getting professional advice. This is a very individual matter, isn't it, ultimately, on what you'll save or what you'll be spending. And Pete says we won't be recommending anyone to our wonderful lawyer. That's a bit mean, Pete. An accountant after one Brit did a runner and didn't pay their fees. Oh, I see. So you're a bit embarrassed by a fellow Brit there who hasn't paid the accountant that you love working with. They're worth their weight in gold, it has to be said over here. I have found a great Portuguese accountant who is competent, responsive, and friendly, and speaks great English. Such a relief. I was often in that situation. It was all going so well at the beginning of the relationship, but then you find that something hasn't been taken care of. It's so important to get yourself a good accountant and get those word of mouth referrals. I think, Bobby, we've talked before, haven't we, about this lack of agreement between accountants even. Yeah,
I've 3. And as I said before, they can't agree on certain things, if you know what I mean, as in how I should get paid and what way I should pay myself, where I can, make it in such a way that it works across the boards, because one's working for a company, one's working for another company, then another one's a personal accountant, and he wanted me to get paid this way, and another guy says, no, you can't do that because of this, this, and this. So to be honest with you, they give me the bill and I pay it. That's the way I deal with it, because it's how do you say, it's not worth messing with, to be honest with you. So it's just pay it. It's bureaucracy. And actually, I love the answer a lot of people get. So like, if you ask another accountant, what's the best way for me to do this? It's again, it's the shrug. So a lot of people, it's a difficult question.
And you have to get used to that. You have to get used to the shrug and going with the uncertainty of it all. If you've come from Switzerland or somewhere where it's very precise in all of its filing and the law, you're looking at the other end of the spectrum here in Portugal. So with a couple of minutes to go, maybe your reflections, because it's good. It's very important, isn't it, as we were doing earlier on, to end on a positive note, or to reframe this, as you said, Bobby, in a larger context. This is a change. It's a big change. Golden Visa, NHR, the changes in how foreigners are seen in Portugal. This is all going on as we speak. And I think it's very important that we I think now, this thing I've been wanting to push of the Portugal Immigrant Network, where the foreigners get together to say, hold on a minute, we are being pointed at by your politicians as being the bad guys here, but actually we've got the numbers here. We see our impact in a slightly different way. And I think it's important that the foreigners start speaking in that way. And so that there is understanding and connection between the foreigners coming in and the people of Portugal. That's my own hobby horse. But Heather, you were saying, an amended system, it wasn't the reason you came to Portugal. It was a bonus. What else might you like to say in conclusion this morning?
Just ultimately, you fall in love with Portugal or you don't. And if you fall in love with Portugal and the numbers work for you and the situation works for you and the visa works for you, there you go. And NHR should be looked at as a bonus, as it always has been, because it goes away regardless. I mean, I'm done with it in a certain amount of years, no matter what. So just that perspective is being lost. I'm more big picture. So
well said. Thank you for adding that. Bobby, would you add to that?
How would you say? I was even sitting with my son last night. Now he's 27, and I was just saying that we live in paradise. A lot of people don't realize that we actually do live in paradise. And it's a pleasure to wake up here every day, regardless of all the little bureaucracy sort of things that annoy me.
Yes.
It's very, very small in comparison to what you get in return, to be honest with you.
What a lovely moment. A father speaking to his son and being able to say that. How beautiful.
Yeah. And he actually said, yeah, you get real deep, huh?
That's a lovely moment. That's wonderful. And this paradise, of course, funnily enough, you and I, Bobby, will be filming, hopefully, this Saturday afternoon, coming Saturday in Tamar, in Café Paris, the Paradise Cafe in the wonderful city town of Tamar. So we'll be having some fun when the Englishman, the Irishman, and two Brummies walk into a bar and have a conversation. Really looking forward to seeing you there, Bobby. So thank you very much for being here this morning. Look up Jeremy Black if you want to, but be careful. Go into incognito mode. Use someone else's browser. It's a suggestion, I think, from Darren. So Heather, thank you. Bobby, thank you. You've been amazing, and we'll see you soon. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao,
Bye, guys.
ciao.
Bye.
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.